Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into some really fascinating stuff. We're diving into Islamic eschatology, basically how some Islamic traditions envision the end of times. You've sent us some really interesting material on the Dajjal. Sounds like, well, a pretty intimidating figure.
He definitely occupies a fascinating and complex space in Islamic thought. Like, imagine a figure embodying all the anxieties surrounding the end of the world, a being who embodies deception and chaos. That's the Dajjal.
Right. And just to clarify for our listeners, you mentioned eschatology. Could you break that down for us?
Absolutely. Eschatology, it might sound intimidating, but it just refers to the branch of theology concerned with death, judgment, the end of the world, the big stuff. Every culture has its own eschatology, its own way of grappling with these ultimate questions.
Okay, that makes sense. So we're dealing with some pretty weighty concepts here.
Yeah.
You've shared some excerpts from the Wikipedia article on Al-Masih ad-Dajjal. And even the name sounds kind of ominous. I even, tried my hand at a little Arabic. Dajjal seems to come from a word meaning lie or deception.
Right, you're on your homework.
Yeah.
It does indeed, and that's a pretty apt way to describe him. The Dajjal is often translated as the deceiver in English. But here's something interesting. While he's a major figure in Islamic eschatology, he's not directly mentioned in the Quran, the central text of Islam.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He appears more in the hadith, which are collections of sayings and stories attributed to the Prophet Muhammad.
So we're looking at a figure who's important, but also kind of shrouded in mystery, at least as far as the Quran is concerned. But those descriptions of the Dajjal are anything Bayuti vague, right? I mean, blind in one eye, the other one green, an inscription meaning non-believer on his forehead. That's not exactly subtle.
Not at all. It's meant to be vivid and memorable. It's almost like a warning, a way to immediately identify him as this force of deception and evil. That one-eyed imagery, for example, it isn't just about physical sight. It represents a lack of spiritual vision, a blindness to truth.
It's like his physical form is a reflection of the threat he poses to people's souls, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the whole deal about him performing false miracles.
That's a crucial point. It shows that he's not just a liar. He's a manipulator who uses seemingly supernatural abilities to mislead people, to make them question what's real and what's true.
Okay, so not your average con man then. We're talking about something far more insidious. It's fascinating how these stories tap into our deepest fears about being tricked, especially by something that seems powerful or even divine.
Absolutely, and those fears aren't unique to any one time or place. Throughout history, people have grappled with this idea of false prophets and deceptive figures who exploit our vulnerabilities and desires.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly powerful deceiver, someone who can warp reality, perform these fake miracles, but he's not working alone, is he? The Wikipedia article mentions that Dajjal has followers.
You're right, he's not a lone wolf. And this is where understanding the historical and social context of these stories gets really interesting. The article mentions weavers, magicians, children of fornication, even Jews are highlighted as followers of the Dajjal. It's a pretty mixed bag of people reflecting anxieties and prejudices of the time when these traditions were developing.
Yeah, it's like this list of followers who tells its own story about who was considered, easily misled or susceptible to dangerous ideas. And the stakes get even higher when you consider what the Dajjal's arrival supposedly signals. The article mentions the conquest of Constantinople and a great war as like preceding events.
Yeah, those details definitely create a sense of impending doom. And this is where exploring different interpretations within Islam adds another layer of intrigue. You sent in a material touching on both Sunni and Shia perspectives on the Dajjal, and they have their own nuances.
Right. You mentioned Sunni and Shia interpretations of the Dajjal. Could you remind me about the key differences between those branches of Islam, particularly in how they view the end times?
Of course. To put it very simply, Sunni and Shia Islam are the two largest branches of Islam, and while they share core beliefs, they have different interpretations of Islamic history and theology, especially regarding leadership after the Prophet Muhammad. Sunni Muslims often emphasize the importance of consensus and tradition, while Shia Muslims place a strong emphasis on the lineage of Ali, the Prophet's cousin and son-in-law, and his descendants.
So how do those different perspectives play out when it comes to the Dajjal?
Well, for example, Sunni tradition often describes the Dajjal's reign lasting for 40 days, but those days are distorted, one like a year, one like a month. This distortion of time really highlights the immense disruption and chaos he brings.
So it's not just 40 normal days, it's 40 days that feel like an eternity, filled with uncertainty and turmoil. That's a powerful way to convey the feeling of being trapped in a world gone wrong.
Exactly. It emphasizes the Dajjal's power to disrupt the natural order. Shia Islam, on the other hand, connects the Dajjal's arrival with the reappearance of the Mahdi, a messianic figure who guides humanity towards justice.
Okay, so in the Shia view, the Dajjal's chaos is a prelude to a kind of spiritual revolution, a showdown between good and evil.
You could say that. The Dajjal's deception tests humanity's faith, preparing the way for the Mahdi to rise and restore true justice. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's hope for deliverance and renewal.
I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here, even though the specifics might differ. Both Sunni and Shia traditions frame the Dajjal as this ultimate test of faith, a figure who pushes people to the brink to see if they'll hold on to their beliefs or succumb to fear and deception. It's fascinating how these ancient stories still resonate with very real human anxieties about uncertainty, temptation, and the very nature of truth. But what ultimately happens to the Dajjal? Does he just disappear after his reign of terror, or does someone, stop him?
This is where the story takes a truly epic turn. Remember how we talked about the Dajjal mimicking the miracles of Jesus? Well, in many Islamic traditions, Isa, Jesus, plays a crucial role in defeating the Dajjal.
Hold on, are we talking about like a showdown between Jesus and the Dajjal? That's a story I got to hear more about.
It's a pretty epic confrontation. In many Islamic traditions, Isa, Jesus, descends from heaven and confronts the Dajjal, armed with divine authority.
So it becomes this ultimate battle, right? Truth versus deception, good versus evil, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance.
Exactly. It's a powerful image. And in some versions, Isa doesn't face the Dajjal alone. The Mahdi, that guided one we talked about earlier, often joins the fight, uniting different strands of Islamic hope and resistance against this ultimate enemy.
Okay, now that's what I'm talking about. A final battle for the ages. So what happens? Was the final word on the Dajjal?
Well, in most versions, Isa or the Mahdi, they destroy the Dajjal, vanquishing the forces of deception and ushering in a period of peace and justice.
So ultimately, it's a story of hope. Even in the face of overwhelming darkness and deception, the forces of good prevail.
Absolutely. These stories, despite their often intense imagery, offer a powerful message of resilience, reminding us that even when confronted with forces that seek to mislead, to destroy, faith and truth can ultimately triumph.
This has been an incredible journey, really, into the world of Islamic eschatology. Thanks to our expert for helping us unpack the mysteries of the Dajjal. It's amazing how these ancient stories, they still speak to us today, reflecting our deepest fears and hopes in a way that feels both timeless and incredibly relevant.
It's been a pleasure diving into these fascinating stories with you. I think the Dajjal ultimately reminds us that we all face tests of faith, moments when we have to decide what we believe in and who we're going to trust. Those choices in the end are what define us.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with. And for you listening, what modern-day Dajjals might you need to watch out for? What tests of faith do you face in your own life? Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive, and we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.